Oh! Okay, that's a lot more than 5!
Run!
Clear,
Okay,
next
stay out the
room.
door.
Okay, mine it, mine it!
Mother of God.
What the fuck
room
is
is
this
awesome.
room?
I learned everything! Shit, I gotta get the fuck out of here!
3, 2, 1, go.
Gtfo. Oh man, where to even start on this one? This game is easily one of, if not the best co-op games of the decade. Developed by Studio 10 Chambers, this game puts an incredibly strong emphasis on coordination and teamwork. Unlike any other game I've played, the fucking slogan is work together or die together. And never before in any video game have I seen a slogan more accurate to how it actually plays. You can do some of the early game duo or even solo with bots, but if you seriously plan to play this game, you need a dedicated team of 3 to 4 players, all of whom you know. If you don't have anybody else, there is an official Discord for finding a team, but honestly your results are going to vary. So on top of being essentially multiplayer only, this game is brutal. One level can last you from anywhere between about 40 minutes to 3.5 hours on average. And in that time, one single mistake can cascade to a total party wipe, sending you right back to the start. Like, I would describe this game as true horror. There's no monster that leaps out at you trying to give you a scare for a few moments. Instead, it's just this constant fucking state of stress and anxiety, wondering if you're going to be able to survive all the way through. But when you do pull through, there's a feeling of euphoria that only comes from overcoming this type of challenge.
Get into the mother.
now? Get her ass.
The sea foam ready. She's getting frozen.
She's right here. Copy that. I won't get in your way. Block you. Homer. It didn't
Yeah,
work.
kill her.
Oh, it did work.
Yes!
Okay.
And challenge you, this game does.
So you drop as a team with roughly half your maximum ammo and full health, and there's never a point where you'll have much more than that. Resources are pretty rare, and they all have to be searched for. When you do find them, there's never enough to go around for everyone. Every step of each level has to be planned as a team. Every resource has to be rationed efficiently. Alright, gameplay. This game has a blend of team-focused stealth and combat, and you need to be doing both. If you have the option to sneak through a part or clear a room quietly, you should be doing so. Going loud consistently is almost never a good idea, and it's a great way to end up with 0 ammo just before that one sequence where you have no choice but to fight. Honestly, if everything that I just described sounds like fun to you and a couple of friends, hold off on watching this video. You know, come back after playing it, go in as blind as possible, and let's compare opinions. Like, I strongly recommend trying this game yourself. It's pretty challenging, and it's very rewarding.
We did it. Oh, we got her.
Holy shit, dude. I wasn't sure we were gonna survive that last wave, dude.
So at this point, some of you are probably wondering what the premise of this game even is. Well, this would have been the part where I explain it, but it was so long and boring when I recorded it that I've decided I don't have to explain shit. Look, all you need to know is that you play as one of 4 people who either voluntarily or less voluntarily were part of the beta stages of a super soldier program. You have a chip in your brain that controls you subconsciously, and a supercomputer in a facility known as Biocom feeds you objectives using it. The facility fell to a deadly virus that turned the majority of its hosts into monsters, and you and several other staff ended up stuck deep inside. You all retreated inside of hydrostasis units and entered into a comatose state. This caused you to lose the majority of your memories. 7 years later, a mysterious entity known as the Warden hacked into Biocom and took control of several of the pods, awakening the people inside and forcing them to delve into the now fallen facility to perform various tasks. Why you are doing this is not clear at first, so I'm going to leave it equally vague for now. Things are going to come into focus as we play through each of the missions, however. It gets kind of piecemeal fed to you. Around like the rundown 5, rundown 6 mark, it does translate into the centerpiece of the game, but it's really not important for the early bits. So anyways, the game is divided into 8 campaigns that are known as rundowns. Each rundown is further divided into several missions. Each rundown usually has a specific goal that it has you work towards that becomes more and more clear as you progress through them. Around the rundown 5, rundown 6 mark, this story becomes a lot more clear, so I plan to really delve into it when we reach that point. Okay, so to break down the way that this game actually plays, we have to start by selecting a mission. All of the levels in this game are divided in a type of grid, where you start at the top, which is the easiest, and you work your way down into the bottom. They're organized by letters, with the top level being the A level. I would say from A to B, the levels are usually pretty easy once you know what you're doing. They're going to pose a bit of a challenge when you're just starting out, but it's pretty good to come back to them later to see how much you've improved. C level is where the game really starts to show its difficulty. It's where I personally find the game the most enjoyable, but some of these levels can act as serious barriers when you're going through a rundown. Overcoming these challenges with your team can be pretty fun, however. D tier, on the other hand, is what I would call very hard. Some of these levels are just complete dick flattenings your first time through them. It's where the game's strengths really show themselves the best, but some of these levels can feel near impossible on your first time through them. Alright, finally, we have the E tier. These levels are fucking brutal, man. There's only a handful of them throughout all 8 of the rundowns. I think there's 7. And I'm pretty sure that they were put in the game just to make sure that nobody would ever complain that the game was not difficult enough. These feel like fucking Kaizo Mario levels, man. So anyways, once you pick a rundown and a mission, you get sent to your loadout screen. From here, you're able to select between a primary, a secondary, a tool, and a melee weapon. Out of each of these slots, you're able to select absolutely everything that's available right off the hop. There's no unlocking system. It's worth mentioning, you can also edit the loadouts of any bots that are in your party. Alright, let's talk weapons. There's actually a pretty good variety of guns on display here. Some are designed to do high, single target damage, while others are clearly designed to just be sprayed into a crowd. Some have infrared vision to help you see in low visibility, while some have hell rounds which pierce and stagger enemies. In my opinion, pretty much everything is viable too, so I would recommend giving absolutely everything a try. Not everything's viable all the time though, so it is pretty good to mix up your loadouts and try different things. When it comes to melee weapons, however, I'd recommend giving all of them a try once, and then just stick to the ones that you were best with. You can bring any of them in, and they all serve different roles. You definitely could bring anything, but I would definitely make sure your party has a good mix of all of them. When it comes to tools, however, I wouldn't be picking so willy-nilly. I definitely talk with your team and agree on what each of you is taking. You can definitely bring everything, and the only thing that always needs to be coming is the bio tracker. It's just too important not to have. There's a bot in your party, he'll be the guy carrying it. He's just so much better on the pings than a human, it's unbelievable. If you're going into a mission totally blind, I found that a burst sentry, a shotgun sentry, and a mine layer are pretty good picks to complement the bio-tracker. But this won't work all the time, so you might need to switch it up. Once you're all ready, you just hit initiate drop and then... So, on the drop down, we receive a vague hint of what might be in store in the level, followed by the mission objective itself. And that's it. We get nothing else to go off of. We have to figure out what to do ourselves. I could go into more detail on this, but I think it would be easier to just run you through it in the first mission. Before I do start breaking these levels down, I'd like to give my 2 cents on the order I think you should play them. Just to be clear on what I mean, it's possible to hop into the first level of any of the 8 rundowns right off the get-go. But a question that I see quite often from new players is, where do I go if I want to have the best experience? And there really doesn't seem to be a strong consensus on exactly where that is. The most common answers that I see are Rundown 1 and Rundown 6. Now between the two, I would recommend Rundown 1. Rundown 6's gold highlighted missions are the easiest missions in their respective tiers, but once you get outside of them, Rundown 6 is actually quite a bit harder than Rundown 1. Like, I wouldn't call them the hardest missions out there, but they're definitely not something that you just want to throw a beginner into and be like, hey, this is the game. Rundown 1 has a steady difficulty curve, and I feel like you're really only going to enjoy it if you do it first. Unlike 1, you can come back to 6 and still enjoy it because it has a lot more going for it at the time. The story really starts to unfold, and it has a lot more cinematic moments. So if you want to hear my opinion on the order to play through all of the rundowns, it goes like this: 1, 3, 2, 4, 6, 5, 7, and then 8. I feel like this gives the game the best difficulty curve, while also letting it end on a strong point story-wise. I would also recommend waiting to do all of the E-level missions until you're at about Rundown 5. On top of that, if you hit any kind of hard wall, just move on to the next rundown. Constant failure can be pretty demoralizing, and it's actually pretty crazy how much you can improve if you just go somewhere else and then circle back again. So for the majority of this video, I just want to go through each rundown mission by mission, talk about what happens in it, what I thought about it, and maybe share a few moments that my team had along the way. Let me preface this by saying that this is not a walkthrough. We're just a bunch of goofs that like to play together. If you do want a walkthrough, I would recommend going to Professor Scaler. He makes some really good videos breaking down each level and the strategies to employ in each of them. He also talks about all of the tools and enemy types in depth. And honestly, if you're struggling, turning to him can make things a whole lot easier. Like, I personally have used him quite a bit in some of the harder levels. Okay, that's part 1. Time to just start digging into this thing. Alright, R1A1. On the drop down of the level, we get told that we need to locate a hydrostasis unit, and that's it. You're left to your own devices to figure out where exactly it is. In my personal opinion, I would call this one of the better levels for learning how to play Gtfo. This level's on the shorter side. It just lets you go in, get out, after learning a couple things. Took me about 40 minutes on the first go, and getting this footage took me like 15-20 minutes. The first room you drop in is pretty big. It's well lit with its darker corners, and most of the time it's got a couple of the basic enemies. The game calls them sleepers because most of the time they're in a dormant, like sleeping state, but every couple of seconds they'll put out an echolocation When they're doing this, they make a clicking noise and glow red in the dark. In this state, if they detect light or noise, they'll activate. And when they do, you got like 3 seconds to kill them quietly before they scream and alert the whole room. This activation isn't immediate, however. If you just uncrouch, move slightly, or you're a little late in stopping, they'll just pulse, but they won't wake up. Light also triggers the sleepers, but once you're used to it, this is honestly more of an advantage. You can quickly flash your light on a group of dormant sleepers to sync them all up, and then when they turn off, it gives you a good opening to move around. Other things that can activate sleepers include things like alarms, really loud gunshots, or sprinting when you're right next to one will immediately activate them. So this is where the stealth comes in. A fully charged melee hit to the back or the head of a sleeper usually kills them in one hit. Usually. Sometimes it just doesn't. Like, stay vigilant. Your melee hits also make noise, so you're going to have to work together with your teammates to kill groups of them in sync. Or if you're skilled enough, you can chain your hits and kill a couple in rapid succession. A combination of both is necessary for later parts of the game. There's 2 other things located in the first room that I want to talk about. First one being the orange lockers. Each orange locker contains 1 to 2 supply types, and they're spread fairly evenly throughout the level. Those supply types being ammo, health, tool ammo, and secondary tools. The first 3 types I mentioned all have a set number of uses. Each use gives you roughly a fifth of your maximum capacity of that resource. If you use ammo, you get 20% ammo in both guns. Tool, 20% ammo in that tool. Health, you get 20% of your health back. Secondary tools, on the other hand, are limited use items that have a pretty wide variety of applications. By far the most common of which is glow sticks. It's a light that you can throw that doesn't alert the sleepers. Pretty simple and straightforward. There are other secondary tools, and there's even other resource types out there, but I'm going to talk about them as they come up. The other thing that I want to talk about is terminals. They're pretty integral to how the game plays. Like, you need to be using them for just about everything. But in order to explain how to use them, first I have to break down how the levels in the game are designed. Each level is divided into multiple sections known as zones that are further divided into lettered rooms. For example, when we first drop in this level, we're in Zone 49, Room A. You can figure this out by reading your map or looking at decals on the walls and doors. Each door in the level also specifies what zones they lead to, so it's possible to figure out your route before going into any room. You can use a terminal to query an item ID to figure out exactly which zone it's in. You can then go to that zone and use the ping function to figure out exactly what room it's in. The ping also makes a visual marker so people can tell exactly where it is. So if we query the HSUID we get at the start, we can figure out that it's in Zone 52. By looking around, you can find that that's directly west of where the terminal is. Going into the next room, you find a security door that leads to Zone 52, and it requires a colored keycard. We can then go back and query the key ID to find out that it's in Zone 50, which can be reached by going north. Another nifty function is to type list followed by the zone number. It will give you a detailed list of every item ID that is located in the zone. So usually there's about 1 terminal to a zone. Your first goal when you enter a new zone should be to locate that terminal. You can then use it to ping any resources that might be in the area and figure out which rooms you're going to have to go to. So heading north to the security door to Zone 50, it warns you before opening it that it has an alarm. Alarms work like this. As soon as you hit that switch, the horde is coming for you.
Jesus Christ.
Okay, I am C-foaming. Oh, or we're
Jesus!
just gonna activate it. You know that was an alarm.
Get over, get to the scan, everybody!
Yeah.
Oh. It's only
Great.
class 3. We're not setting up for this one.
Sorry, I thought we would have to wait a second. Might be.
I'm so confused.
Even if you manage to fight them all off, another wave will spawn. Your only way to end the assault is to stand in the scans that appear on the ground until they fill all the way out. Some scans require the entire team inside of them, some split into multiple smaller scans. Some travel across the entire room before appearing, and some travel like 2 feet and then appear. The number of sets of scans you have to complete to end the sequence is equal to the alarm's class. This alarm is class 2, so we have to do the initial group scan and one more set. To get through these alarms in one piece is where your tools come in. The scans are always confined to the room that the door is in, so you can set up a defensive position, seal doors, place turrets, lay mines, whatever helps thin the horde and buy you time to do what you gotta do. Tip to players with bots, you can give them orders, including placing their tools by holding Q. If you ask them to do anything more complex than like putting down a turret, you're gonna get some bad results though. So that's the simplest type of alarm. They do get a bit more complicated than this, but we'll get back to that. During this alarm, you're probably going to notice that there's actually 2 variants of sleepers. Ranged ones that are going to shoot you from a distance, and melee ones that run up close and tongue you. Each hit does 5% of your health, which sounds small at first, but when their numbers overwhelm you, they'll drop you in a matter of seconds. On top of this, a giant usually spawns in during this alarm. He can soak a lot of bullets, and unlike the small ones, he'll hit you for 20% at a time. He also has an attack where he just goes completely apeshit if you're too close, and it just melts all of your health instantly. Now is probably a good time to mention that this game has friendly fire, and it's a fairly large amount you take too.
Then you shot me?
So in most situations, you're going to be wanting to move carefully. You can't just run around trying to dodge every bullet like a Toho game. When I say it like that, it sounds brutal, but I swear, this is just the beginning of how fucked up things are going to get. So completing this alarm, we're able to open the security door. Unlike regular doors, once we open the security door, it can never be shut again. The flip side is, sleepers are not able to break down a closed security door either. So, we enter Zone 50 and the enemy density becomes slightly higher. Your bioscanner guy may also notice a red dot moving through one of the rooms. That is a scout, and it's probably the biggest challenge that this level has to offer. Unlike sleepers, scouts walk around the room, and instead of using echolocation, they shoot out a ton of little feelers in every direction, and they travel a pretty far distance. It's this simple. If a feeler touches you, the whole room wakes up, and a decent-sized horde of active sleepers spawn, and they're coming for your ass. Once the scout activates, you have quarter second, half second to kill it before this happens.
What the fuck
He
was
walks so
that?
weird.
Yeah.
No, I saw what happened.
After which, it becomes temporarily invincible until the wave is summoned. The safest way to kill a scout is to headshot it with a high damage single fire weapon after clearing out a good chunk of the room, then fighting the rest of the sleepers that you wake up. The way that you should practice killing scouts is with a fully charged melee swing to the head or the back of the head if you're not a sledgehammer or a spear. It's tricky at first, but it is something that you're gonna have to master eventually. The best advice I can give is to dedicate to the hit even if it puts its feelers out. As long as you don't sprint, you should have just enough time to pop it if you're accurate and reasonably close. Anyways, with the scout out of the way, we can now locate the terminal to ping and retrieve the key, and then go back to the security door to Zone 52. If you're one of the small percentage of people that thought to check out Zone 51, it's a single room with no enemies and a ton of resources. There is no need to go here at all, and it's pretty easy to miss it, but it does pretty much guarantee that you're prepared for the next zone. Speaking of the next zone, we double back, insert our key, and Class 4 alarm. Class 4 alarms are actually probably the most standard type of alarm in the grand scheme of things, but this one in particular is more challenging than most. To explain why, I gotta go into spawn mechanics. Enemies generally spawn 2 rooms away from your current room during alarms. The first room we dropped in counts as 2 rooms, and the other room that they can spawn in likely had its door broken from the first alarm we did. In other words, they're going to be on you pretty quick in this room. The way it's set up, you don't get any good sight lines either, so they're able to get pretty close before you start shooting them. So in spite of how small the room is, and how quickly the scans move, you almost always end up fighting multiple waves for this exact reason. A shotgun sentry mitigates this quite a bit if used correctly, but that's my experience talking. New players are going to end up in a bad state from this room, and I'm pretty sure that that's intentional. Because if you end this alarm with good health and ammo, it's incredibly easy to just go guns blazing for the rest of the level. So, we enter the last zone, and right away, it's significantly darker than the rest of the level, and it has a much denser amount of enemies, along with a couple of giants. It's possible to kill giants in stealth, but they don't die from just one melee hit. It's even possible to solo kill one without breaking stealth, but I would strongly recommend that you use at least 2 people with alternating hits. This way you can do 2 at a time, or maybe 1 plus 2 other regular sleepers. The most foolproof way is to just have your whole party strike it in sync from the back. So, after finding a terminal, we ping the HSU and head over to the same room that it's in, and we hit the final challenge of this level, actually locating the thing. My first time through, we were searching lockers for it. For reference, this is what they look like. Like, I swear to God, half the mission our first time around was just looking for which locker we missed, until we bumped into it and got the prompt. After taking it, you have about 5 seconds to get running before the alarm sounds and the enemies start pouring in. This alarm never turns off. You're fighting your way out now. The run is actually pretty short, but this felt pretty intense the first time around. After a scan by the warden to confirm we have the core sample, he pulls us out. That's R1A1. The mission itself is pretty short, but I feel like it shows off the concepts of the game, so it's pretty understandable. This is a bit of an aside, but if you query an HSU at any level, you can read about the person inside. Okay, I'm just going to jump right into the next one. R1B1 is named PID Search, and lo and behold, we get told to go find a bunch of employee IDs. The level on the whole is basically a choose-your-own adventure, where you have to go down 2 of 3 paths in order to get enough IDs, and it's up to you which of the 2 you go down. When I think of this level, the opening room comes to mind right away. The raised platform and the 3 different doors to go down. The first time through as a team, clearing this room without breaking stealth felt like a real accomplishment. Once clear, you're free to go down 1 of the 2 doors. One of them has an alarm, and the third one needs a key. I imagine, like my group, most new players opt to take the door with no alarms first. This is a rookie mistake. Doing that just opens up another direction for enemies to come from when you do come back to do the alarm. If you're gonna enter a zone with an alarm, give it priority over non-alarm doors. This rundown comes back to this idea later, but this is the first time that it really shows you this. So, since I'm telling you to do this alarm first, I'm going to talk about that path first. This is by far the easiest of the 3 paths, no scouts or giants all the way down, and the only moments of difficulty are the alarms themselves, all of which have good rooms. The worst of which being the first one, just because of how annoying the scans can be sometimes. Like, They'll go all the way down and then keep going still. The zone it leads to has a key you need to go down the other path, so you at least have to come here if you want to go that way. Spoiler alert, don't do that. The enemy density is low, and the rooms are well lit. You grab a few IDs, and right away get another alarm. This time, slightly longer. Now this room has 2 doors, but the sleepers very consistently just go to the north door. I think it has to do with how their pathing works. They pick the route that brings them the closest to you as a top priority, with doors being secondary as long as the number that they have to pass through is equal to or less than another route they could take. That's all theory, by the way. I got nothing to back it up. Anyways, the alarm's pretty easy again. Less ideal for turrets, so mine layers and seafoam really get to shine here. The next zone is even better lit. It has about the same amount of dudes, too. You clear them out, grab some IDs, and yet another alarm. This one's actually incredibly easy. It has great sightlines and only one route of entry, which every single tool is capable of capitalizing on. Just make sure you get all the scans.
I think there's one enemy glitch.
What?
What? Oh shit, there's another scan!
Oh,
Oh
fuck.
shit! It's like, what the fuck is happening?
The zone after this alarm, however, introduces a new factor of challenge. Fog. Love it or hate it, most people hate it. Fog is quite common in Gtfo, and it's used in a variety of ways. So the footage I'm showing you now is from the zone, and this is actually considered half-density fog. Actually, a bit to break down here. Firstly, I want to mention that using your flashlight in fog kind of helps you personally see, but it's like straight up blinding for your teammates in higher densities. Second, glow sticks will reveal the silhouettes of sleepers in fog, which is super handy. Besides that, I got nothing right now. This zone only has basic sleepers, and it's the end of this route, so I'm going to circle back to the next one. The next one that I'm going to talk about is the route that you need a key to go down. I honestly have no idea why anyone would ever go down this route. This route is fog right from the start, and like half of the spawns are giants. No alarms, but a fuck up in some of these rooms is just a wipe right there on the spot for new players. Even experienced, I'm just like, what the fuck in some of these rooms. Like, these paths are not balanced at all. One's clearly way harder than the other two. Like, I even went into the resource spreadsheet, and you get the same amount of everything as all of the other zones would give you. Now, I'm sure it's possible to have no choice but to at least go into the first zone, but you would have to be incredibly unlucky, and at least I personally have never had to. I saw the back of this zone for the first time to get this footage. This is just a side note, but this happened while I was getting the footage.
Yeah, I hate how big shooters like light up because it just looks like they're alert.
Oh god. Oh no.
Well, it's oh my god, that is impressive you recovered that. I saw how you killed that guy.
Honestly, this random imbalance is a recurring theme throughout the rundowns, so I think that the developers intentionally do it. Just as like, hey, here's this really hard place you could go if you want to do it. There's no reason to do it, but it's there. So anyway, finally we have the North Path. The one with no alarm in the hub room. The challenge here can be explained in one word. Scouts. First we have scouts patrolling with regular sleepers, then scouts patrolling dense rooms, and finally, scouts walking around in the dark with giants in the rooms. That last one's pretty hard, and if your crew can stealth that zone, you have my salute and a firm grasp on the stealth of this game. So, on the whole, I like this level. It's forgiving enough that making mistakes in most areas is recoverable, and there's a variety of ways to challenge the players, letting them get a feel for the game. Not a lot new gets added, but a lot gets built upon that was already there. Once you get your quota, you simply walk out of the place quietly this time around. Just as like a side note, holy moly, coming back to this level, Rundown 1 is just dark. Like, incredibly dark. The rest of the game is not like this, but you really notice it coming back. Like, holy. Okay, moving straight into R1B2, we get another HSU mission. Getting another one of the same type so soon is kinda lame, and in my opinion, this mission is on the lame side too. This game rarely misses, and this one sucks especially since it's one of the first ones a group will likely do. It's basically just a test to see if you've learned to use the terminals yet, and there's nothing else really unique about it. Well, there is one thing. All of the sleepers that are dormant are ranged in this level. I have no idea why. Maybe there's a lore reason I'm missing out on here, but breaking stealth here is especially punishing. If you're playing solo, it's missions like these that you're really going to notice the shortcomings of having bots. The first few zones are pretty linear, basic sleepers, and one scout in the second zone. Along the way are 3 separate doors that require keys. And that's the test. You have to enter one of these 3 zones, and to get the key, you have to enter one of 2 other zones further ahead. The game's basically checking if you're querying where items are, and if not, you end up struggling, as many of the doors in this level have alarms, but are completely pointless to go into. The most prominent of which is Zone 19. I have no idea why you would enter this zone. Checking on the terminal, I saw it had a small number of doors and a decent amount of supplies, so I figured it was a resource room. Well, I was wrong. Not only is it one more alarm to do, it's the only zone in the level with giants, and opening this door makes extraction like 10 times harder. To top it off, there's fucking nothing for supplies really, considering how sprawling these rooms are. Circling back to the main mission, the zone I consistently get the HSU for is 21. Like, we're talking 9 times out of 10 I go there. The key is a lot more random, but the route to both zones the keys are in is pretty much the same, and so are the zones. To progress, you always end up needing to do a Class 2 alarm to enter Zone 18. This is the first alarm I can think of where you get rewarded for pre-planning. This alarm is pretty easy, but there are 2 other security doors in this room. If you plan around the idea that they might have alarms too, you might think to leave a couple of the doors open in this easy one to preserve them for the harder ones. This is just a side note really. This level is very much doable either way. So opening up to Zone 18, we get a pretty linear route through the fog that leads to a hole in the wall and a branching path, each route having a Class 3 alarm. You only need to enter one of these zones, and if you fuck up, the alarm for entering the other one is quite a bit harder, with enemies now having 2 paths to come from. The scans in this room can be pretty terrible sometimes, and other times they can be astoundingly quick. It's a real dice roll. Moving into whichever zone has our key, regardless of the zone, we get large, densely packed rooms. This is the point I would call the most difficult for this level. The multiple floors make it pretty easy to accidentally awaken a sleeper with no way of recovering, and all of the ranged spawns can deal a lot of damage, even if you kill them quickly. So now we recover the key, go back to its door, and Class 4 alarm. The enemies can come from 2 ways, and it's possible to have 0 doors to slow them down. The room has pretty good sight lines, so this alarm is not that bad, however. It's downright terrible if you open the wrong door and then have to do the other Class 4 alarm. So yeah, Terminal is your friend here. Moving on to the final zone, we get the most well-lit zone in the level, with a moderate amount of sleepers and a scout on patrol in one of the back rooms. These final rooms are challenging, but if you've gotten to this point, you're more than capable of handling it. So we locate the HSU, take our sample, and fight to extraction. Depending on spawns, this one can be quite a battle. That's the mission. Really don't have a lot to say on it. It's definitely the worst mission in R1, and I would place it as one of the worst in general, but that's really more of a testament to how high the bar is for level quality than anything. Speaking of quality levels, next up is the C tier, and that's where the game really begins to bare its fangs for the first time. So having said that, here's a hard to swallow pill. R1C1 is actually very, very easy. I'm not being elitist about it, that really is the truth. With that being said, you're gonna get wrecked on your first attempt or two if you're new to the game. You're gonna have no idea what you could be doing differently. The reason that happens is because R1C1 is unlike anything you encounter in the prior 3 missions. It's combat oriented and boils down to 15 minutes of planning and 20 minutes of combat. Believe it or not, the planning is the important bit here. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. On the drop, we get told to find a reactor and make sure that it's online again. Well, the reactor's pretty hard to miss. The whole level is a straight path north, with a giant circular reactor room at the end of it. Barely any enemies lie between you and it, and the level is absolutely littered with supplies. This is also the first time that stealth scans appear, which is funny to me because they make no sense at the time. The trick here is to locate the high use supply packs in the level and switch them with all the low use supplies you find closer to the reactor room. This way, when things get hectic, you don't have to go too far to get anything, and you don't have to search too much either. Honestly, even moving supplies up a room or two might make the difference between you being able to go get them or having to leave them. You are still going to end up diving deeper for supplies later, but only because this mission gives you upwards of 3 minutes of spare time in some of its lulls. This is the last time the devs are this generous with time, by the way. Reactor missions are basically a survival mode, where you have to hold out against waves of enemies for a set amount of time. After which, a password needs to be entered into the terminal in the reactor room. If you fail to enter the password, you do the entire wave again. If you do get the password, you're given a rest period to prepare before the next wave starts. This reactor consists of 8 waves of increasing length and difficulty, with the password appearing right on your screen in between each wave. The bridge just before the reactor is by far the best spot to hold out, and honestly, if you're not taking triple sentries, I'm genuinely curious what your logic is. Mines just eat up your tool refill, and Seafoam seems to be bugged at the choke point the sleepers funnel through. The later waves of this reactor had the first hybrid spawns in the game, and you're probably not even gonna notice. Being new, they just seem like regular ranged giants. Especially when ranged giants have pretty much 0 spawns before this. Depending on this bridge, you find that you're pretty exposed to the ranged volleys that they put out. So my group would usually have a guy with a sniper that would pop them immediately, or we would all focus them down as soon as they came into sight. The key to success is your communication in between waves. You gotta be saying what you need, what you have, and where you are. The guy doing passwords especially needs to let others know what he needs. That is, if he plans to get a resupply ever in his lifetime. At the later stages, when supplies grow scarce, a few teammates may even need to dive deeper into the level during the calm periods to quickly grab a few more supplies. Do not do this if you do not know where you're going. After the final password is entered, we fight our way back out and extract. The fight's on the weaker side, and the extraction scan is pretty quick. I think this is intentional, since most teams are going to be almost out of everything by now, especially on their first go around. Not a lot else I can really say. It's on the simple side on paper, But this mission is a hard barrier for new players, especially if you're going in totally blind. It just is. You can feel like you're doing everything right, then one wave you just have zero supplies and end up getting your shit pushed in. All in a matter of like 2 minutes. Just keep at it and you'll succeed. Coming back to this mission, it really is very easy. But if you're watching this and it doesn't seem that way to you, I feel your pain, man. Alright, over the hill now. Next up is R2-C2, Decode. This is easily the hardest mission in this rundown, like, without a doubt. Like C1 before it, I would say this mission is actually on the easy side, but you're gonna get totally rinsed by it. To add insult to injury, this mission is the longest of Rundown 1, and all of the hard parts, right at the end. On the drop down, we get told that we need to collect some decoders, another gather items mission, but this time, there's a lot less freedom to where you go. You need to be checking how many decoders are in zones before entering them, and planning which ones are worth your time, and which ones are better left alone. Resources are on the tight side, and doing unnecessary alarms will put a major drain on your team here. So we open up in a pretty standard zone, a couple of giants and regular sleepers. The following zone is a lot more of the same, but holy moly is it densely packed. I don't think there has been one time where we've cleared the larger room without alerting anything at all. One of the first zones that decoders spawn in can be accessed here. It's behind a class 3 alarm, so nothing too hard, but I swear, we forget about the third potential door they can come through every single time and leave it totally undefended. Moving on to the next zone, we get an introduction to another new enemy type, Chargers. Chargers are basically tougher sleepers who trade their ranged variant for a way stronger melee. Chargers hit you for 7% per hit, and unlike sleepers, they can just pop off and chain multiple hits in succession. Basically, you never want to even let them get into melee. The ones we encounter here are dormant, so they pose much less of a threat. Unlike sleepers, they get no damage multiplier in the head though, so you gotta go for the back. If you brought a knife, I hope you like constant close calls, because it takes 2 hits to kill one, and they love to just skip across the entire room after hit number 1. So we clear out the Chargers and collect the PDs before moving on to the next zone, which is also a Charger zone. But this time, you have no choice but to go in. This one has an alarm door at the end of it, and this one's unique in that it only spawns Chargers. For this alarm, we like to use a strategy where after the group scan, the Seafoam guy just runs to whatever door they're at and keeps spraying it down to buy time, while the rest of the team does the scans. Charger alarms can go south incredibly quickly, so strategies like this that just delay the wave are pretty much what the meta is. During this run specifically, we had a ton of tool ammo, so we set up turrets on the other side of the door. Didn't even see one Charger, but they came pretty close to getting in.
Seafoam.
Dude, it was one hit.
This next zone is a mix of every single enemy type that we have seen so far, and it can be pretty brutal to try to stealth for a new team. Of course, the rooms are also huge, so if you do fuck up, you end up fighting a ton of guys. A couple of decoders do spawn in the zone, and if you're lucky enough to have 3 of them spawn, there's good odds that you just saved yourself an entire alarm door. A key can also be found in this zone that opens another optional route that gets you more decoders. That zone is exclusively giants, but it's pretty well lit, so we usually don't even clear the rooms and just sneak around checking boxes. Going back to the main path, we end up in the exact same room that R1B1 opens up on. This time, is much brighter and full of chargers. Just like B1, we're left with 3 doors to go down. The one that needs a key is extraction, so you're forced to go into whichever of the other zones has that key. Both doors do have a class 3 alarm, and they're pretty easy to clear if you've been conserving your resources. I've gone to both zones an equal number of times, and it really is random which one you're going to have to go to. Your last couple of decoders should also be in the zone with the key. If you need more, I would figure that out before opening the security door. That way doing the other alarm is quite a bit easier. So going down either zone, you get a mix of all the enemy types again, but this time it's in a much darker area. I think the spawns are denser too, but maybe we just got unlucky placements. And I would say that this is the start of the hardest portion of the level. You need to stealth these rooms because there's an alarm at the door leading to extraction, and it spawns chargers. If you run out of ammo or tool for that alarm, you're hooped. Stealthing these rooms is no easy task, however. You need to be in coordination with your team. If you alert a charger, it basically immediately alerts the rest of the room. The alarm itself is on the hard side as well. Chargers spawn from at least 2 directions, so you have to divide up your defenses. The scans here can be pretty slow too, and if you get unlucky enough to have them consistently go from one side of the room to the next, it can really drag on. The best advice that I can give you is to just stay close to your teammates. Being split up can ruin a run pretty quick. And on the flip side, I've seen some pretty crazy recoveries be made by my team when we all group up and just get in the zone. If you make it to the door opening, that's basically the win. Extraction is quick and it's like 20 feet from the door. And that's the sea-level missions in a nutshell. First you have your combat skill tested, and then you go through the stealth gauntlet. I would like to say D tier is where they tie it all together, but C2 is without a doubt in my mind the hardest part of this rundown. There's something about the C2 of like every single rundown that just makes it a giant difficulty spike. On the other hand, the first D level mission of a lot, but not all, rundowns is usually not too bad. R1D1 is the worst defender by far. This mission is easy peasy if you've done everything before it. With that being said, I still like this mission quite a bit. This is the point in the rundown where we finally get a tiny sliver of a story beat. Everything that we've been doing thus far has been leading up to this moment. First, we gathered DNA and IDs to gain access to the power grid. Then we booted up the top level's reactor and gathered PDs to open the lockdown on the deeper levels. Now in this mission, we close the door behind us as we descend deeper into the facility. So, I think canonically, we're not waking up and being dropped down every single time. Like, if you follow the story beats, it makes no sense that we would do all of this and just beam back up to the start. Why wouldn't the warden just drop us deeper to start with? Ignoring that inconsistency, I think the mystery of what we were doing is actually pretty interesting. It's vague enough that it's not in your face, but also obvious enough that you can deduce it yourself if you stop to think about it. Okay, enough story for now. On the drop down, we get told to go find a reactor and shut it down. Alright, easy enough. This mission operates like a reversed reactor in several ways. Firstly, you have to pass through several security doors to get to the reactor, but this time, all of them are alarmed. Unlike a reactor, the emphasis this time is on stealth. The rooms of this level are absolutely loaded with enemies, and you don't get enough ammo to just blast your way through. The bullets you waste on failing stealth might be the bullets you need to clear that last alarm door an hour from now. What makes this level easy is that there are security doors to the sides that you can just open to get more resources if you run low, and they are absolutely loaded. Basically, throw the whole concept I just pitched at you out the window. you can fuck up quite a bit and still salvage the situation. I think the intended challenge is that you open a security door, and then the alarm for that room becomes harder with the extra direction enemies can come from. That goes completely out the window if you do the alarm first, or just backtrack to a prior zone to keep the enemies funneling in. Also, these resource zones are not made equally. Some are so loaded, it trivializes the mission. Zone 76 and 78 come to mind. Sure, they're quite a detour from the main objective, but you can essentially do a full restock on the entire party from these zones. Alright, breaking the level down. The first zone really sets the bar. A large number of sleepers with a couple of giants mixed in. And that describes all but maybe like 1 or 2 of the zones through the entire level. There is some fog again, but I found it was quite a bit less noticeable in this level than some of the others. After clearing the first room, we immediately get a class 4 alarm. This alarm's nothing too crazy, but the lack of doors puts the enemies on you pretty quickly. A mistake that we would make in the beginning was fighting the whole wave and then doing the scans in between lulls. What you should be doing is fighting into the scans and trying to get them done before another wave spawns. I found that class 4 and below can usually be done in one wave if everyone is focused on getting those scans done. Opening up into the next zone, we get another zone with no doors, and this time, a scout's on patrol too. After slowly clearing it out, we find that the way forwards is a class 5 alarm, which is the first one if I remember right. The optional resource zones start here, but we do the alarm first to keep a good choke point on the sleepers. Running triple sentries, they thin out the waves pretty substantially here, while we focus on doing the scans. If you haven't noticed yet, we were all running shotguns in both slots for an achievement as well. This handicap was the hardest part of the level by far. The ranged sleepers became quite a bit more threatening now that they were out of range, and we couldn't just run up to them either, since a single shotgun friendly fire does between 40% and 80% of your health. Even at this severe disadvantage, we came out of it in a state that was not too hard to recover from. So, after clearing this alarm, we opt to go to a resource route to stock up for the next room and its alarm. Nothing too interesting about these two zones. You're in the fog a lot more than the first zone, but it's pretty easy. The second zone in has a pretty large amount of giants, but it's also got an absolutely insane amount of resources that makes clearing it well worth it.
Okay, so the
Yep.
turns off, we're going. Charge.
Oh!
Oh! I didn't mean it that way!
He got a swing in.
I did not mean it that way.
Down.
Charged immediately slips.
The more interesting zone is the next one leading northwards. We get our first double scout room. To make it even better, half the room is in fog, and it's absolutely loaded with sleepers. I would say that this is the hardest part of this level, assuming you have a biotracker. I'll explain why that is when we get to it. The scouts move fairly randomly, and if you're unlucky, they might just stack up and walk in perfect sync. I'm pretty sure it's a glitch, but I've had it happen enough times that I'm mentioning it here. After clearing the room, there's another class 5 alarm. This one is quite a bit harder just because of how the room is set up, but we really just use the same tactics and we managed to clear it. This time we take quite a bit of a hit in the process though, so we opt to take the second resource route as well. This route is pretty much exactly like the other one, but the second zone with the giants is quite a bit larger. It's equally loaded however, so we recover almost completely. We actually come out of this zone with 9 spare uses of ammo. Our tools are doing a lot of the work here. So, progressing further along, we arrive at a tunnel leading to the reactor room. No enemies, but if you have a sharp ear, or read the wiki, you'll notice that somebody is banging on a pipe in Morse code, telling you to escape. I wouldn't worry about it. The door to the reactor room is just a security scan, and there are 0 dormant sleepers inside. At the center of the room is the terminal that we need to shut down the reactor. After a group scan and 1 verification code, everything shuts down and we just walk out. Yeah, just kidding. We start doing scans while enemies start to rush into the room. But these are not regular sleepers, these are shadows. They are very similar to regular sleepers, with 2 key differences. The most obvious being, they're basically invisible. Unless you shine your light to reveal their silhouette, they are just about impossible to see. The biotracker does ping them, however, and the other major difference is they are slower with less health. A sentry won't target them unless they are pinged, but when they are pinged, 1 or 2 sentries will hold off the entire wave. This just highlights the importance of the biotracker. Unpinged, you may as well just spray blindly, hoping to hit them in some levels. So, our biotracker guy sits with the turrets while we do the scans, and once they're all wrapped up, we make a dash for extraction. All of the lights are now off, and the shadows do continuously spawn in, but since they're slower than us, we just sprint past the first group and we're home free for the rest of the level. So yeah, that was Rundown 1. Not my favorite, probably not anybody's favorite, but it does a really good job of showing all the mechanics and core ideas of the game. Beating every mission gives us this hard hat, proving we have completed orientation and are ready for the horrors that lie deeper within. And the game does not waste time either. Rundown 2 is a pretty dramatic jump in difficulty. I know going into it next goes against my own order that I said to play them in, but I came out with that order after having suffered through these missions. While on the whole it's pretty hard, Rundown 2 does start easy, letting you drop your guard before it drags you into the pits of hell. It can actually be divided pretty cleanly this way, with the first 5 missions being on the easier side, and the last 5 being dramatically harder. It's like you're slowly curving upwards in the B tier missions, steadily having the challenge increase, to a sudden jump in difficulty that'll just continuously demand more and more and more from you. If Rundown 1 had a difficulty curve, Rundown 2 has a fucking difficulty cliff. The story of Rundown 2 is pretty easy to follow, however. Each tier has its own goal that you're working towards, which all tie together in R2E1, where the curtain is finally pulled back and we learn what we've been sent down here to do. Starting from the top level, R2A1, ironically titled The Dig, is actually another short and easy mission that teaches you the basics of the game. To explain why that is, this game used to be a live service where every couple of months they would just trash the current rundown forever and replace it with the next one. So obviously, in order for new players to be able to understand how the game works, they had to make the first levels of each rundown play pretty much exactly the same. When they started to focus on the story more, they axed the idea of removing rundowns, and slowly brought back every prior one they had axed, making a few tweaks to them along the way, hence why they are now called alt rundowns. Anyways, this mission opens up with us being told to retrieve 2 cases of P Mother trial samples. Wonder what those could be referring to. So the first thing you're going to notice is that we get dropped in our first brand new tile set. From this point forwards, I'll be calling this set the Dig, and the previous set the Foundry. We are going to see a few more tile sets throughout the rundowns, but each level generally sticks to 1 tile set the whole way through. There are exceptions later that have multiple tile sets in the level, and they really stand out because of that. Anyways, locating these cases is pretty straightforward. One always spawns in the same zone, and the way to progress to it requires you to get a key. The other case is in one of 2 other zones, which both require you to take the same route to access. So, checking which zone the key is in, we make our way forwards, which is blocked by a simple security scan. The entire way through, you only deal with basic sleepers. This zone leads 2 different ways, one of which you're going to need to go down to get the first case. The key for the other case is always in this middle zone, by the way. Whichever way you do end up needing to go, you have to do an alarm. Either alarm is class 2, keeping it pretty easy, but unlike Rundown 1, they both have multiple potential entry points, so strategizing is more important here. Or don't strategize, these are not exactly hard alarms to clear. So, moving on to whichever zone had the cargo. Either one is a single room with the scout and a couple of enemies, the south one being a bit bigger, but they have about the same enemies and resources. Locating the cases, we find our first item that needs to be carried. The guy carrying it cannot sprint or use his weapons, so he needs to be escorted by the other team members. This rule applies to all carried items, by the way. Doubling back with the cargo, we unlock the key door and class 4 alarm. I'm seeing a trend in how these first missions go. The room the alarm is in is not too bad to defend though. The security door that we had to open to pass through teaches the players a valuable lesson right away though, by showing them how much harder that side is to defend than any other way that they might come from. Altogether, nothing crazy. The last zone that we have to go through has a scout on patrol in one of the rooms, and a handful of sleepers. The new and exciting thing is the fog. If you happen to crouch in the fog in the back room of this zone, you might notice a burning noise is played and a blue bar starts to build up over your health. This is infection. It's inflicted onto you a couple of ways, but the most common of which is through a certain type of fog. Infection deals damage over time equal to your infection level. Even if you restore the health, the infection will tick it back down. For example, if you have 20% infection, you will take damage anytime you are over 80% health, until cured. The only way we can remove infection right now is to find a disinfect pack. Like all other resources, it removes 20% infect per use. Infection is kind of the core theme of Rundown 2. Basically every tool related to dealing with it is introduced right here, so I'll mention them as we find them. Grabbing the second cargo crate, we get a quiet walk to extraction as we deliver them, followed by the longest extraction scan ever. Multiple waves will close in on us in this time, but they're all just basic sleepers. So extraction's basically guaranteed at this point. And that's A1. A good warm-up for the next tier. Speaking of, R2B1 is a mission that I have quite a bit of nostalgia for. It's not terribly challenging, and it's quite short, but it really stood out to me my first time through it. On the drop down, we get a vague warning about opening doors, and then we get told that we need to clear a path to a zone further in the level. Wow, easiest task so far. All we gotta do is go somewhere. The first room is well lit with only a handful of sleepers, but about halfway into it, we start to hear this.
Okay.
That is what the community refers to as blood doors. They're regular security doors in all functions, but the seals are visibly covered in blood, and, like I just showed you, something is banging on the other side. Walking up to it, you get a warning that motion is detected on the other side, just in case it was not obvious enough. Opening the door immediately spawns a gigantic horde right at the door. Usually a couple of hybrids get spawned by blood doors too, and they're definitely the main threat. If you happen to bring a mine layer, it mitigates the threat a blood door poses quite substantially. So if you know there's going to be some, grabbing one is not a bad idea. So the rest of this mission is remarkably short. There's a total of 6 zones, only 4 of which you need to enter, but I would recommend going into 5. The first one is the room you drop in. The second one is more of a hallway split into rooms to connect every other zone. The third one is an optional zone, and I'll get back to that. The last 3 can all be accessed from the same giant room at the end of the hallway zone. The first two zones contain only basic sleepers. As far as I know, scouts just can't even spawn here. The way to progress requires a key, which can be found in one of the other two zones, both of which require you to open a blood door. The east one is way better than the west one, but they're both essentially the same thing. Before I get into that, let's talk about the optional zone you can go to. It's a class 3 alarm to access, but it's well worth doing. The zone consists of one large room with a scout and a very large number of sleepers. Even if you mess up the sneaking, I would say that this zone is still worth going into. It has an insane amount of resources in it, and skipping over this zone makes the finale of the level very tight on time and resources. Anyways, our strategy for this alarm was to open doors in a way that no matter how the enemies spawned, they would all come through the same way. This let us save doors for later and stack up our turrets on one single entrance. So going back to progression, we have to get that key, so we open up another blood door and fight all the enemies inside. Only this time, the room behind the blood door also has a bunch of sleepers, and it's pretty much inevitable that we wake them up. This is not common. Usually the first room after a blood door is completely empty. Going either way, the zones play out pretty much exactly the same. Sleepers mixed in with giants, and one of each of the supply types.
Shit, do we still have a tool?
Tool refill right here.
Oh, you found it. I was gonna say, like, I get some
And
more
an-
mines for this. I'll just
and a med
mine
pack.
everything.
They're all in this
Oh
one.
my god, it's loaded.
It's
Dude.
the
Taking the key back to the central room, we discover the door to the final zone is a Class 7 alarm. If you've been playing them in order, this is easily the toughest alarm yet. The room is huge, so there's good odds the scans go all over the place. On top of that, one of the ways sleepers can come from was the blood door, so we can't completely seal the room either. Our plan went like this. We had a good amount of tool and ammo, and since it was the end, we decided to just fight the spawns that would come through the blood door and use all of our tools to defend the other way. So of course, all three waves spawn from the blood door, and our tools are completely useless. This worked out in our favor in the end, but at the time, it was pretty annoying. So the final zone is a single room with an extraction alarm. The scan's slow, so you know they got something coming. Well, that something is a wave of entirely giants coming to check if you have any ammo left. But, lucky for us, they spawned the opposite way, so we had seafoam and several mines prepared already. In the end, one half-dead giant made it to us before we extracted. So yeah, short mission, but it had a lot of great moments, so I'd call it one of the best B-tier missions in the game. On the other hand, B2 can be quite divisive. It introduces my least favorite mission type, it's the first mission to introduce a playstyle that I'm not a fan of, and it's the first appearance of the worst enemy type in the game. Yet I wouldn't call it a bad mission. It executes what I think it set out to do quite well. Okay, on the way down, we get a list of 4 generators that need batteries. Once we arrive, a full box of cells is placed at the start with us. There's one for each party member. If you have a bot, you can actually make him carry one as well. So if you hop on a terminal, you're bound to notice that there's a lot more than 4 generators in the level, and a couple extra cells. So unless you feel like finding every single cell in the level, I would recommend paying attention to which generator you're putting a battery in. The zone that we drop in does have one of the generators we need somewhere, and luckily for us, the terminal is right at the start. This zone sucks, by the way. It's multi-level, with the type of floors that sleepers can see you through, and the large majority of the spawns are giants. If you mess up a couple of rooms, you're gonna notice the other gimmick of this level pretty quick. This level has like half the average amount of supplies, so breaking stealth in the early parts more than once or twice if you push it, guarantees you run out of something in the back half. I call this type of design a starvation level, and this one's especially egregious since the back half basically demands that you have ammo to spare. So, placing the cell on the first generator, we're left with only one way to progress forwards. We open the door to the next zone, and we get greeted by this. These are spitters. They are an unkillable enemy that shoots infection at you if you get too close. Sometimes, anyway, they're pretty scuffed. Spitters can be dealt with in two ways, really. Technically there's three, but the last way is just stupid. First, simply shine your flashlight onto it. It has to be a certain level of intensity, so if your light's not turning it off, try getting closer, or using either your gun's light or a long-range flashlight. The other way, if you're in a hurry, is to just shoot them. Both ways deactivate them for 30 seconds. If you're curious, the last way is to use Gtfo, which is a total waste on one spitter since there's usually like 30 in one room. So as you can see, this pitch black room is full of spitters and sleepers, and it's also another spawn for one of the generators we need. So we go through and we clear the entire room. Luckily, as quickly as spitters come, they go. The next zone is back in the light and spitter free. This zone has our third generator as well, and after clearing it, we're left with 3 potential ways to go. One door is just a security scan, that's extraction. The other 2 have class 5 alarms. We only gotta go down one of these routes, so we simply query our final generator and find that security door. This alarm can really go one of 2 ways. Sometimes the scans go really quick and we clear it in one wave. Other times, every single time it splits into smaller scans, one of the scans decides to go all the way up the room or all the way down, and we end up using all of our tool and ammo right here. Heading into either of the 2 zones, we get double scout rooms. These rooms also have our last little crumbs of resources, so we usually end up full clearing all the rooms of whatever zone we go to. Inserting the last cell unlocks the door to extraction, and we get told to make our way there. The final zone that we have to go through brings back spitters, and also increases the enemy density. To balance this out, the lighting is quite a bit better, so it is easier to navigate around. Working your way to extraction, you might hear the distant echoes of a blood door. Well, that's not even the hard part. I imagine most new players are going to be like us and assume blood doors are not alarm doors. Prepare to fight the blood door when it opens, and activate a class 5 alarm without setting up any defenses. Luckily for us, our first time through, we caught it just before hitting it. This part boils down to an ammo check. Have you been clearing rooms in stealth? Did you not trigger any of the scouts? If yes, you have enough ammo to do this alarm and then clear the blood door immediately afterwards. If no, it's gonna be close, and you're definitely gonna be out of ammo. As a mercy, the extraction is silent, so another short mission, but god damn does it feel long when you're playing it. I personally hate these type of levels where the punishment is not immediate, so you always make it to the end just to find out if you've played well enough. In terms of design, I can only assume they intentionally wanted to torture us, so I'm going to call this level good in parentheses, an ass in my opinion. While I can call B2 good when looking at it objectively, I think B3 is just downright terrible. It's a shame too because the mission type it introduces is one of my favorites, with a lot of quality missions in the later rundowns. This first one, however, is a flop. For starters, the layout of this level sucks. There's no point in forming a strategy since the enemies will do just the most outlandish shit and just pathfind in the stupidest ways. Secondly, most of the alarms of this level, including the last one, require a guy to just take infection to do the scan, the last of which being potentially the worst, as a guy might just have to sit in infectious fog on a terminal for an extended period. So, hopping into it, we get told to find a specific terminal on the level and uplink to it. We get dropped back in the dig, and this time the infectious fog is a lot more prevalent. This first zone just kills it with the atmosphere, by the way. Keeping to the routine, we find a terminal and query the other one that we're looking for. There are 2 different zones that it can end up being in, and they both require a different key to access. Ironically, both keys are always in the same zone, so your progression stays basically the same until the very end. The way forwards requires you to do a class 4 alarm, and let me just say, fuck this alarm. I cannot for the life of me understand why the sleepers move the way they do during this alarm. They basically plan their route completely at random, and to make matters worse, there are multiple low spots in the room that scans can go to that require you to just dive into the infectious fog. This level later introduces a solution to this problem, that being fog repellers, but I think the spawns are bugged. They just seem to be about as rare as seafoam grenades. To make it even worse, the sightlines in this room are very narrow, and the room is just filled with debris and pillars, so the sleepers spread out right away once they're in. It's complete chaos. The zone past the alarm, however, is pretty nice. It's vertical for a change, with both giants and sleepers, and a scout or 2 walking about. This zone has one absolutely massive room in it that counts as multiple rooms. If you fire your gun in this room, it's basically like doing an extra alarm. But if you stick to melee, even if you fuck up being sneaky, only a small portion of the room will alert at a time. So after grabbing the key you need, you can just turn straight around and go back to whichever door you need to go through. Well, that's what I would say, but when making this video I did a little bit of reading, and I found out, holy fuck, there's a resource zone in this level. I was actually about to complain about this level being another starvation level, but it looks like I was wrong. I went back to check it out, and yeah, I would say that this is worth going to. The wiki says, many giants, but we got 2 in each room, and there are 3 rooms. In the end, we just blasted all of them, and came out with a net gang on everything. It makes the entire level way more manageable, and it just goes to show the importance of looking for supplies. Anyways, inserting our key, we get a class 5 alarm. Now this one's fucked, because regardless of which room you're doing the alarm in, you end up needing the exact same doors that you just used during the prior alarm. To add insult to injury, the enemy can now just waltz into the security door that you opened. This is especially bad if you need to enter the west door, since it shares the fucking room. Either way, you're basically going to be fighting during the scans this entire alarm. Moving on from this alarm, all you really have left to do is enter the zone and find the terminal. Regardless of which of the 2 zones you go to, there's going to be multiple terminals. They have fixed spawns within the zone, but which terminal you need to go to is completely random. I'll be straight. This next bit is straight up RNG. Depending on the location of the terminal you need, the uplink process itself is either a total cakewalk or a tough uphill battle. You need to defend the room the terminal is in from waves of enemies, so depending on the room, you have between 1 and 4 potential entrances to defend. If you get a terminal with 1 or 2 entry points, you're laughing. Otherwise, strap in. The length of the uplink itself is dependent on the one single guy at the terminal. He has to enter a sequence of passwords into the terminal, which he determines through a simple puzzle. Each section starts with a bunch of different passwords displaying on everybody's screen. The guy on the terminal will get a key for the correct password. He either then says what the key is and somebody tells him the corresponding password, or he hops off the terminal and deciphers the password himself and hops back on to type it in. The latter is, in my opinion, the better option. There's just less room for error, and once you're used to it, it goes so much faster this way too. Wrapping up our uplink, an extraction alarm starts blaring, so we fight our way back to the spawn. If you don't go to the resource room, things are pretty tight at this point. So hopping onto the scan and seeing how slowly it ticks up the first time is pretty stress-inducing. Honestly though, even with no ammo, I doubt you're gonna wipe at this point. So yeah, that was the worst uplink mission in the game. A shame too, since uplink usually does the most interesting things in its levels and requires the most planning as a team. I give it a C-. Moving on. B4 is peak infection mechanics. If you somehow have not noticed it yet, this level sits you down and forces you to learn every single mechanic revolving around infection. So dropping back in the foundry, we get told to go find a fog turbine and take it to extraction. I find this hilarious, but for all the wrong reasons. When I came to do this level, I had already beaten R3B2 and R4B1. 2 levels with fog turbines, without even knowing what the fuck a fog turbine is. I beat those 2 levels just by diving into the fog. For everything. Believe it or not, R4 was the harder of the 2 to beat this way. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. So, we drop above fog level, but this zone slowly descends until we hit a point where whole rooms are just covered in infectious fog, with no clear path. This is where the fog turbine comes in. But first, we gotta go get it. And to get it, we make our way into a gigantic nest of spitters. The first zone is just a scatter of basic sleepers. The low points of the rooms have fog, so you have to route around it for now. Usually, to clear a room, we fire one shot after killing everything we could in stealth to pull everything that's left in the fog. There's really only one way to progress here, so we make our way west, and this is the zone where the spitters begin. And there are a lot more than last time. This zone also contains giants to boot, making progress through this zone pretty painful at times. The tunnel full of spitters always stands out for me personally, and it's how I remember this level. There's a key we need somewhere in this zone, but the door it unlocks is submerged in infectious fog, so we don't go there quite yet. The fog turbine we need to collect can be in one of 2 zones, both of which we access from here. Both are class 5 alarms to get into, and both rooms you do scans in are full of spitters. Taking infection here is inevitable, unless you're like me and take 100% infection resist, then you just take shitloads of damage, thinking you can ignore the spitters.
It has to be in this zone. Oh my god. See my health?
Yeah.
The zone we go in after this is the same enemy-wise, but now the rooms are huge and it's pitch black. I actually love the challenge of this zone. Wandering through the dark, briefly flashing your light ahead, keeping an eye out for the glow of spitters. Towards the back of this zone, the fog turbine is lying around somewhere, and after you decide who's going to carry it, you head all the way back to the start. Which takes a while, by the way. All the spitters are still there too.
Thank you,
God. Do you still have medkit?
I do.
So the way a fog turbine works is simple. If somebody is holding it, it blows back all the fog around it, allowing you to travel through without taking any infection. Once dropped, it slowly powers down, slowly reducing its radius to nothing. This is not immediate, so a guy can drop it if things get crazy to help out a bit, and then just pick it back up. To progress to extraction, we get another alarm door. Once again, it's class 4. In spite of how big this room is, I have never had a hard time with this one. Planning defenses is relatively easy, and thanks to how large one of the adjacent rooms is, enemies take a good while to even reach you. Even if they spawn to the south, it's a decent run for them. Moving on to the next zone, the first room contains a disinfection station, a sort of infinite use disinfection pack to get you back to 0 infect before the hardest part. Because after this room, the zone is completely submerged in fog, meaning your whole crew has to stay close to the fog turbine at all times. I like this concept in a fast-paced level. In parts like this where you have to be more methodical, it's a lot more of a pain in the ass. Like a guy carrying the turbine while all of you push up is tense, and the fog parting gives you this drive to keep moving forwards. But stealth clearing rooms, when one guy has to walk the whole fucking outline of every single room, is painful, even with a good team. The zone itself is pretty standard beyond the fog, so I don't really have too much else to say. The interesting part is when you get a class 4 alarm at the end and have to clear it within the fog. Well, if you happen to find some fog repellers to throw around, it's actually just like any other alarm. Doing it without them is a pretty fun challenge though, that requires a pretty good amount of communication. Oh, after this alarm, there's nothing but your standard slow extraction alarm, where you fight a wave or two, and that's the B tier of Rundown 2. These first 5 missions are nothing too crazy, a lot of new ideas but nothing harder than what you got in Rundown 1. It's the jump into C tier where we see a dramatic step up in the challenge. They are hard. C1 sits in this weird place of having the title of easiest hard mission. We get dropped down for an uplink again, but this time it's not one terminal, but 3 separate uplinks. We drop in a pretty basic zone, but it has a shitload of rooms and 3 total ways to go. The north path takes us even further into the complex, and either the east or the west is going to have our first uplink. After clearing this entire zone, we check the terminal to find out which of the 2 it is and make our way there. Both side zones play out the same, really. Sleepers and giants in an even mixture with multiple terminals in the zone. So you find out which one you have to uplink with and defend your terminal guy while he does a 4-password uplink. The twist is that the uplink waves spawn mostly shadows, so your biotracker guy has got to bring his A game here. Honestly, this first bit's relatively easy. We usually do this one last, for reasons that I'll go into later, but the intended way is to do this uplink first, so that's what we did here. As you can see, a little bit of proper tool use completely mops up the shadows. Really makes it quite a bit easier actually. In order to progress further in the level, we gotta do a class 5 alarm after this, in a pretty bad room too. This is where the challenge of the level really begins. The sheer size of the zone the alarm's in makes funnel strategies impossible. There are multiple doors that sleepers can potentially come from. Also, the scans for this room just love to go from end to end to drag the entire alarm out. No shadows for this alarm door, but it's still plenty difficult. The room it leads to is even worse. Thick fog engulfs the entire lower level of the floor, which is mercifully not infectious. On the other hand, every room in this zone has a scout on patrol and a bunch of sleepers. Clearing this room takes patience and teamwork, and if you're a 4-stack, good callouts on the biotracker guy. This fog is so unbelievably thick, it's not unreasonable to walk straight into an enemy and trigger it. Between the low visibility, the high enemy density, and the scout on patrol, I don't think it would be a stretch to call this the hardest room in the level. The rest of the zone is not exactly easy either. Every room has a scout and roughly the same enemy density, but the rooms are quite a bit smaller by comparison. The second uplink is in this zone also, so we need to clear all of the rooms. Unless you want to risk waking a scout in the middle of an uplink, that is. The uplink itself goes pretty easy. The shadows can be funneled, and 2 turrets mop up the majority of them, letting us save ammo for the harder action bits coming up. Side note, unpinged shadows in the fog are basically impossible to see. So if your biotracker for any reason goes down, he is priority 1 revive, even at the cost of yourself. Also, thermal weapons can see through regular fog, so precision rifle goes pretty hard here. Right after the uplink, we get an alarm with shadow waves in the same zone. In spite of how huge the room is here, the scans have always been pretty kind to us. Usually, we're almost done the scans by the time the first wave is rolling in, which we then quickly mop up. Next zone ups the challenge again by making the rooms even bigger. Like this whole zone is just 2 rooms with blood doors on the east and west side. Yet I've never found this bit harder than the first room. We only have to enter 1 to get our last terminal, so after a brief check we set up our defenses. Now let me just say, this blood door can be bullshit. There's a chance of scouts in the room behind the blood door, meaning you have a half a second upon the door opening to try and dome it before it calls in another wave.
Let's say I can shotgun him. I have a shotgun. Precision has to be back ahead.
Okay, ready? He's
He's
close.
right there. Yeah, go ahead. I'm right here. I might go down. I missed.
Oh.
Or I didn't miss. Just he was too far away. Whatever. That was probably pretty inevitable.
On top of that, like I said before, the whole zone is 2 rooms, so it's possible the scout wave forces you to pull anything that you have not yet dealt with. The blood door besides the potential scout is pretty easy, and like the first uplink, regardless of which of these 2 you go to, they play out about the same. The door itself spawns shadows, and after that, the zone is a mix of giants and sleepers, with spitters hanging around in a couple of the rooms. Like I said before, one of the rooms at random will have a scout in it. These zones are not very fun to go through, and if you go to the west zone, the uplink terminal is even worse. For whatever reason, the spawn rules for this uplink do not apply, and enemies spawn adjacent to your room instead of 2 rooms away, meaning they hit you from 3 directions here, and for whatever reason, they also spawn in all 3 at once. The east zone gets a little bit easier since there's only 1 room with terminals, and it's at the very end of the zone. I assume the idea is they would have a harder time extracting, but I'll get into that. West side has a total of 5 terminals, 3 of which are in the center of the zone, which is completely submerged in fog and covered in spitters. To top it off, once you finally complete the uplink, an extraction alarm starts. If you had a magical crystal ball lying around, you might know this and leave the uplink closest to extraction for last. A very smart choice. If you don't, it's inevitable that you're fighting multiple waves of enemies on your way out. Eventually, you'll get far enough out and lucky enough that a group spawns behind you. From that point on, you're home free. If you remember the path out, that is. Extraction's nothing weird, so if you make it there, that's a mission success. Like I said, R2C1 is a jump in difficulty from B tier. It's a far cry from how hard it's about to get, but it feels like the game saying, you must be this tall to ride. And to be fair, we did fail this mission on our own first attempt. Funny, considering some of the missions we did later on the first go. Anywho, R2C2 is a pretty big shift from every other mission thus far, assuming the red font instead of white didn't tip you in. Even the mission description is off. On the drop down, we get told to gather some IDs, but again, something's off. As soon as we hit the floor, an alarm's blaring. This is the first error alarm we encounter, a staple of this series that we're going to be seeing a lot more of. So error alarms work like this. They have a fixed spawn amount and a fixed time when they spawn. In this instance, every 45 seconds it spawns 4 sleepers, and very rarely one of them is a giant. The other gimmick of an error alarm is that about 70% of them never ever turn off. You have to do this entire level with an alarm going. So this level shows player growth like no other. It's going to absolutely wipe the floor with every new player that tries it, and I mean everyone. It's just so different from the levels before that the alarm is going to put a lot of pressure on new players, and they're going to rush certain bits, miss IDs, and in general struggle a lot. The funny thing is, coming back to it, this is a very tame error alarm that really lets you take your time searching and properly preparing. The first couple of zones don't even have enemies besides the alarm spawns, so you can split up if you're confident and have each member do their own thing. So talking about level design, you need to get 7 IDs, and 9 spawn randomly across 4 zones. It is possible to need to go to all 4 zones, but not always, so it's worth taking a second to check how many IDs are in each of the zones. It's actually really simple how to check. If either of the 3 zones after the first has only 1 ID, you know that you can get 7 going to every other zone, but that one. Ideally, there are 3 in the first zone you collect from, and 2 in every other zone, letting you pick your poison. Anyway, the first zone we drop in is just the spawn room, a giant open room, and another smaller room. There are 3 ways to go from here. The west door needs a key, and ideally, if we gotta come here, we save it for last. The east door leads to the majority of the zones of the level, but it needs a cell, which we then grab by entering the north zone. While in this north zone, we also grab a fog turbine. Inserting the cell, we get a class 3 alarm. And this is the hardest part of the level without a doubt. Most people are either going to take too long to start and lose all the doors before even starting the alarm, or rush into the alarm with 0 plans or forethought, both of which are incredibly difficult to recover from, even if you do clear it. The scans tend to stick to the side of the room the door is on, so that's a plus. But even being a class 3, you're probably going to fight 2 waves. The zone we unlocked is totally submerged in fog, so one guy has to carry a turbine while the other 3 search the rooms. This zone is the first with IDs, and it also has the resources which I'm sure the team is gonna need. There are no enemies in the rooms, so you're really just limited by how fast you can search efficiently. In order to progress to the next zone, we have to do a class 2 alarm in the fog. Another very tense moment, but I would say that this is nowhere near as challenging as the first alarm. The room is small, so you can be done scans pretty quickly, then group up in a good position and kill the wave. Once that's wrapped, the next zone immediately leads back out of the fog, so we drop the turbine for now. There are parts later where we could use it, but it's not worth the hassle. The zone we just entered can basically be described as a hub area. It's got a handful of resources and a key for an ID zone, but the important bit is that it has a terminal that's easy to defend. While everybody else loots the zone, one guy takes this moment to figure out where all of the IDs are. Regardless of what zones have IDs, we then go to the east zone. The zone itself never has any IDs, but it is completely loaded with resources and has a second cell if we need it. This is our only restock for this mission, so if it's not enough, it's usually a wipe. To compensate for having tons of resources though, this zone is huge, so it takes some time to search. New players are gonna feel pressure from this, but the air wave is so easy to deal with, I would say it's worth staying to find absolutely everything, no matter how long it takes you. Proceeding forwards, we usually take the blood door to the north first. This requires a power cell to open, by the way. The blood door is nothing out of the ordinary, but starting here, there are dormant enemies in the rooms. This one's the worst, so it's best to get out of the way. Most of the enemies here are giants, so unless your entire group is practiced in meleeing giants to death quickly, just pull the rooms immediately. The zone's pretty big too, so finding all the IDs might take a while. My advice is no matter how long it takes, find every ID in each zone. Dealing with the air wave is way easier than going into another zone from here. Next, we take the blood door to the south. This zone has quite a bit more sleepers and infectious fog, but if you're accustomed to speed clearing rooms from things like reactors or protocols, this is a very easy zone. It's at this point my team found enough IDs to leave, so I'll just describe the last zone. It's back at the start and takes a key to enter. It's got no infection and quite a few giants. Speaking of giants, once you gather the last ID, a wave of 6 giants spawns to attack you, and the extraction becomes available. The alarm does not get any harder until you get into the extraction scan, so you can take your time getting back and getting ready, because this one will feel pretty intense. In most levels, this would not be much, but at this point, ammo is probably pretty low. As you can see, we had a lot of tool, but I swear things do not go this well on the first go. I think that's my biggest regret about this game, not recording our first attempts at a lot of these levels. It's a hard grind getting that first clear on a difficult level, but once you get it, you basically get it every time after that. This mission especially, we must have failed like 5 times without even getting through the fog. Then something just clicked and we blazed through everything. Now coming back to it, the magic's almost ruined. I can just see how easy it is by comparison. At the same time, I gotta give respect to the fact that this game allows me to see things that way. Few games really let you see improvement in such an in-your-face way. Speaking of improvement, R2-D1 is the level that made my group just give up on playing chronologically. We gave this mission 2 attempts and then went straight to rundown 3, and we did not come back for a long time. The mission is not just hard, it's very long and punishes mistakes a lot harsher than the levels before it. It's basically a stealth test. The level's been perfectly balanced to provide just enough resources to clear every alarm in it. So 1, you can't waste any of the resources you get by breaking stealth, and 2, you have to take the time to find every resource in each zone. So dropping in, we get told to deliver cells to a generator cluster. Only this time, we don't start with the cells, we gotta go find them. I love this mission type usually. The way they generally go is something like this. The level is absolutely covered in fog, usually infectious. You have to work your way to the generator room, and from there you have a plethora of zones to go to, each containing 1 cell. Every cell you bring back to the generator lowers the fog a little bit, making the other zones easier or harder to get the other cells from. This mission type really highlights how well put together these levels are. Harder ones like this let you essentially tackle zones in any order, but also reward you for pre-planning and having experience. If a zone's shit, you know to wait a bit before doing it on your next run. Mind you, this game's developed to a point already where the community has made optimal routes for every single level and zone, but if you're going blind, this one's really going to put you to the test. Getting back to the level itself, the first zone you drop in is mostly covered in infectious fog. It has no turbine and no cell, so your only goal should be to proceed forwards. In order to do so, you have to cross a decent-sized low spot through the fog. To get across, you have to scour the rest of the zone before it for fog repellers, then create a pathway. Repellers don't last forever though, so this is basically a one-way trip. The security door at the end of the valley is alarmed, because of course it is, so I hoped you saved some repellers because at least one of those scans is going straight back into the fog. The waves from the alarm itself are pretty easy since they can only come from the one-way and they usually run in a long straight line to get to you. The challenge, really, is just avoiding getting too much infection while getting the scans done. Past the security door is the generator cluster, and our first cell is somewhere in this room. I like this as an introduction to the mission style. The room is almost entirely submerged in fog when you walk in, but the first cell lowers the fog enough that you can walk around at all but the lowest level, clearly showing you how things are going to go down. From this point, there are 3 security doors, but you're forced to take the west one, which is another Class 5 alarm. Again, this alarm is pretty easy. The enemies spawn so far away, and you get such a great sightline that once again, your only concern is not taking infect really. It's once you open the door to the other side where shit gets real. There is always a scout in this room, potentially 2 even, and a metric shitload of sleepers.
Yeah, 150-ish, or 450.
Up next to him.
Oh, what the
Someone
fuck?
just touched him. It's alert. It's alert. Back up. Everybody get up
Fuck
here.
me, I'm pretty
Hold
sure
this
that was me.
position. You get up here, guys. We're holding this position.
I'm running. Oh my god, there's so many.
Waking this room up without clearing most of it first reduces your ammo to nothing pretty quick, and you're not going to find a lot more. Clearing this room and the neighboring room in stealth is incredibly difficult, but if you don't do it, it's about impossible to recover from. So going forwards from here, the world is our oyster, so I'll just talk about these zones in the order that we did them. So first up are the 2 zones with the class 5 alarms. Only one of them can ever have a cell in it, and if that one is 613, it's always best to grab it first. 611 is the easiest zone by far to grab a cell from in my opinion, but doing the class 5 in the west room is pretty annoying without putting at least one more cell in first. Regardless of which room you do, you're going to end up getting some scans that go into the fog, so hopefully you still have some repellers stashed away. What our group did to save repellers for this, generally, was to clear out the entire room outside of the fog, and then just pull whatever was left afterwards. So, going into 613 for a cell first, right off the hop we get spitters and giants. This is the easy zone, by the way. The next room after it is another valley of fog. Normally we'd need more repellers to cross since the other side is back out of the fog, but the strategy my team uses here is vastly different from the norm. To explain it, I finally got to break down boosters. Some of you may noticed a couple clips of me grabbing little colored shapes at a couple points in the video. These are artifacts. They are scattered semi-randomly throughout each level, and they have 3 different types to collect. Those are muted, bold, and aggressive. If you collect enough of one type, you get a booster. Boosters are a single-use perk that you can burn in the loadout menu. Muted ones give the smallest boost with no drawbacks. Bold give a decent boost with either a parameter for activation or a drawback. And aggressive give a big boost with either a major drawback or a drawback plus a parameter to activate. So for this level, one of us stacks boosters until we have 100% infection resist. This usually comes with major drawbacks, so usually only one of us does this. That guy is the diver. He goes into the fog by himself and retrieves the battery in a couple of these zones. He is by himself though, so instead of just clearing rooms, he sneaks through, grabs the cell, and gets the fuck out. If you get 611 for your zone instead, you don't have to do any of that. There are no spitters or giants. Instead, you get like 11 scouts in this zone. On the flip side, it can be navigated as a group, and if you've come this far, you've killed a good number of scouts already. So this is the easiest zone in my opinion. It's a little tricky in the back half when they start adding regular sleepers in with the scouts, but it's still not that bad. Regardless of which zone you just went to, instead of plugging in, you take this cell to a solo generator that powers the door to 614. There's no alarm to this zone, and it's totally outside of the fog. The zone consists of 2 large rooms, and the spawns are almost entirely giants. Besides that, this zone has close to triple the amount of resources as any other part of the level, plus a replacement cell for the one you just spent, so it's well worth opening up. This usually brings your team to 100% plus a little extra, which is enough to do the rest of the mission. After this, we take our cell to the generator and lower the fog once again. So, going into 612 next, it's a blood door to get in, but it's a pretty easy one to do. If you went to 613 for a cell, you have a spare door to use here, so we double door it. A mine placed twice makes this blood door pretty trivial. The zone itself is completely submerged in fog, no matter how many batteries we throw in, so for this zone we send the diver in once again. That guy just sneaks in, grabs the cell, and sneaks out as quickly as he can. There's a terminal right at the entrance, so another teammate can feed him pings. This zone's quite large and tunnel-like, so sometimes the diver gets left with no choice but to pull the room to advance. Grabbing this cell, however, lowers the fog to a point where every remaining zone can be navigated as a group. So, we get it out of the way right now. The other blood door we take is a mix of sleepers, giants, and once again spitters, but at this point we've dropped the fog to a point that we can navigate as a group, so it all goes pretty smoothly. One of these two zones will have a key we need to get our final cell. There is one other zone you could get a cell from instead of doing one of these blood doors, but let me just say, it's not worth it. I'm not even going to go into it. You would even get the key to the disinfect zone going that way, and I'm pretty adamant that it is just not worth going into. The final zone's whole challenge is the overwhelming amount of spitters in the majority of the rooms. The room with the truck in the center point is definitely the worst one. On the bright side, it's the last zone that you're going into, so as soon as you get the cell you can do a complete 180. But we don't insert this one right away. At this point, the fog is low, so we can go to a lot of the low points in prior zones for extra resources, which we need since the last cell starts an alarm. Once we plan out our defenses and our escape route, we throw a bunch of repellers out and insert the final cell. Starting a class 5 alarm and making the fog begin to rise back up. It drops right back down once we complete the scans, so we scramble to get them done while the sleepers begin to pour into the room. On the completion of the final scan, we make a break back to where we dropped, leaving everything that isn't in our direct pathway back behind. The run back is easy now, with the fog gone, but the amount of sleepers this extraction alarm spawns is pretty intense. The scan to get out is slow too, so we gotta hold our ground with whatever resources we have left. This is a check to see if you've been stealthing. If not, you're gonna run out of ammo, and you're gonna get overwhelmed here, right at the end. Otherwise, that's the mission. A solid stealth gauntlet that pours on the difficulty the whole way through. A true test of teamwork and skill, and it's only gonna get harder from here. Okay, R2-D2. So before I get into R2-D2, let me just go ahead and point out the obvious. We are running mods in this footage. I know the developers don't approve of running mods, and I imagine the community is probably pretty divisive about them, considering the usual elitist mindset around games like this. Well, let me be the one to say, quality of life improvements do not equal easier game. I played for 200 hours before modding, and I would wholeheartedly recommend at least a couple of the quality of life mods here. I have a pretty small mod list, and all of them are things that honestly should have been in the base game. Like bots not friendly firing, being able to ping anything, and UI symbols for what's in a crate. My footage from here on out is gonna jump pretty sporadically between modded and unmodded gameplay, but seeing as this is the first level where it was, I wanted to mention it. Anyways, if you've played this game already, and are watching this video, you're probably looking to get my take on either this level or the one after it. R2-D2 is easily the second hardest level I talk about in this video. If you were to line up all 80 some levels in this game, from hardest being number 1 to easiest being in the back, however, R2-D2 would sit at like low 30s to high 20s. Mind you, every mission before it is not placing below 40, so it's a gigantic jump in difficulty. If R2-D1 did not push you away from doing them in order, R2-D2 will. That, or it'll just make you quit. Okay, anyways. This mission is the return of reactor startup, but this time, the reactor is only 2 rooms from where we drop. To get to it, we have to clear one room full of sleepers and then do a blood door. This first blood door spawns a lot more hybrids than usual. The openness of the room that they come into makes it very hard to avoid taking damage in this initial encounter. We make our way across an ominous bridge and open up into the main reactor room. This time around, I'd say about 80% of the level's resources are already located in this room. We take a brief moment to locate everything, sort it out, and get down to doing this reactor. Okay, first thing. 10 waves this time around, and right from wave 1, they are sending everything. A huge number of sleepers, a handful of giants thrown in, and even a couple of hybrids everywhere. Defending from the bridge is our best option right now. The little opens, we take cover where we can, and drop the hybrids on site. First round's usually about 3 waves long, and after it, you don't get a lot of time to recover. The second wave plays out about the same until the end. That's right, this time we have to go get passwords in other zones. They're under lockdown until a certain number of rounds pass, so no going to them early. These rooms are far from empty, by the way, so we take what we learned in R2-C2 and clear quickly. Every zone with a password has multiple terminals, but they spawn in the same places, so experience makes the early rounds pretty easy. First password just requires us to go to a one-room zone with 2 different terminals. First one is easy to find, and you can use it to ping the other one. Once on, you've got to be looking up logs and reading them for the correct password. Then you spend the remaining time locating resources and getting back to the terminal in the reactor room. After your first excursion, waves start to get slightly more intense. At the end of round 4, you're going to notice that it's giving you an entire 10 minutes this time around, and another zone unlocks. Only this zone needs a key to open, so we head back to the previous zone to a different security door, enter it, and locate the key within the zone. This zone is packed with sleepers, and you're tight for time, so pulling at least part of it is going to be inevitable. We grab the key and race back to open the door, which has a class 4 alarm we gotta do. If you did not know this was coming, this is one of the biggest oh fuck moments I've ever had in gaming. Mind you, the time that I had this moment was a reactor that happens later, so I was mentally prepared for something like this. You do the scans as quickly as you can and clear out the remaining enemies. Whatever time you have left now, you spend searching a multi-room, multi-floor zone for the correct terminal, and there are sleepers everywhere. If you're tight for time here, stealth is non-existent. It's better to burn resources pulling these rooms than redoing another wave. So, you get the next password, and this time you don't even get 1 wave to breathe. You gotta go find the password for the next round too. This one is the make or break really. If you manage to pull it off, you'll probably get the rest of the mission. You need to go to the back of the east zone and enter a gigantic circular room with a bunch of sleepers, giants, and 2 scouts. Unlike the last 2, you really gotta try to sneak this time. A double scout wave plus shooting through this room is not only very difficult, it's also just way too taxing on your resources. Your goal this time is to kill the scouts, get the code, and then leave, either by pulling the room or just sneaking out for now. At this point, the waves grow even more intense, but we start holding out in a better spot to compensate. This new room makes dealing hybrids easier, which is really the key to getting through the back half of this mission. At the end of the next round, we get told to go find the password again, this time running to the opposite end of the map. So before we even enter the next zone, we get another class 4 alarm. I've always found this one on the easier side. Probably just meant to put pressure on you, but the enemies only come from one way, and it's quite open, so defense is rarely a problem. It's the zone itself where things get difficult again. Every room has at least one scout on patrol, usually 2, and sometimes even more. Under the pressure of time, it's quite likely that you'll alert 1 or 2, and that can quickly cascade into a bad situation. If you do alert one, just plant yourself and deal with it. Pushing further in has not once ever helped us. Grabbing the password, you may notice your resources are getting kind of low at this point. There's still more passwords to be gathered, but by now, you've basically found every kit that you're going to use from this point to the end. And knowing that can make this part pretty anxiety-inducing. Seeing how little supplies are left, and then thinking about how many more waves you have left to do, can really get to you. So of course, we have to go find another password, the very next wave. And this one is a doozy. First thing you're probably going to notice is that you get about 20 minutes to go find this password, and we're going to need them. First things first, we gotta go back to the ring room. If it's not clear, we have to clear it now. No choice about it. The zone that has the terminal needs a key to access, which can be in one of 2 other zones. Both are basically the same though. A door leading to a decent sized zone with a large number of giant spawns. Grabbing the key, we run back to the ring room and prepare for a class 5 alarm. This alarm can be tough sometimes, but I've never had a failure due to it. Once again, I think it's just here to put pressure on you and try to goad you into rushing things. After the alarm, all we have left to do is navigate the zone and find the terminal. This is easier said than done. The whole zone is covered in full density fog. The ring room has fog turbines we can use, but the zone itself is so mazy that it's incredibly easy to get lost in the rush of searching for the terminal. Almost as a cruel joke, the majority of the zone may as well be empty space. Both terminal spawns are in the same room, and there's a straightforward path to reaching them from the entrance. With this password grabbed, all you gotta do is hold out for a couple more waves with the supplies that you have, then quickly punch the password while making a break to the start. The extraction waves for this alarm are basically full-blown reactor waves, so your best bet is to just run. If you make it to that extract, spend everything you have left holding out, and you're in the clear. So yeah, I like this mission quite a bit. It's fast-paced and intense, and it does not pull one single punch. It's complicated and epic, and has several moments that really stand out. Mind you, when you're trying to get that first clear, you're not going to appreciate any of this. This level demands that you reach its bar, and there's really no way to cheese it or get lucky. You have to do several very hard parts, and you have to succeed in at least most of them. So, assuming you have beaten every level before this one, beating R2-D2 unlocks E1. One final challenge to wrap up the rundown, and unlike R1, this one's really gonna put you to the test. Before I cut into this, it's story time. With R2-E1, our first major objective is made clear to us. We have been sent into this pit by the Warden to retrieve an item known as the Neonate Hydrostasis Unit. Every mission thus far has been centralized around making the ideal conditions for this to be possible. In B1, we acted as a diversion to draw a horde of sleepers away. In B2 and B3, we diverted power to Sector C and restored the security functions. Then we decontaminated in B4. For C1, we triangulated the location of the neonate, then gathered up the clearance IDs for Sector E and C2. In D1 and D2, we restored Sector E's filtration units and rebooted the grid, pumping the fog out and powering the sector once more. Now all that's left is to enter Sector E, get the neonate, and get the fuck out. Okay, back to gameplay. I think it's easier to just show you this time around.
This is a good opportunity. Taking it. Nice. Somebody's up. Kill him quick. Okay. Oh, shit.
Fuck. Well, that's
Oh,
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Pull back. Unless they spawn behind us.
That is incredibly unfortunate.
Okay, things coming out.
And
They
it's
spawn behind
down.
us.
Oh, I'm down.
Oh
That's
my
got
God.
friendly
I'm
fire.
down.
Yeah, that was my bad. You walked right in front of me. Okay. Really?
Okay, well,
Actually, almost got
that
them.
happened pretty early, so maybe give it another attempt yet today.
We did it!
Yeah, success.
Everybody, we need to
Go, 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 go.
to the right. We're just running past the enemies.
Yeah, go.
Oh fuck, it's locked.
Kick.
Okay, up the stairs, to the left, up the ladder. I mean. Oh god, there's a giant. It's
Two giants.
scary.
Yep.
Not optimal.
I'm down.
Oh shit. I'm down.
Oh,
And it spawned on me. They spawned on the other
That's
side.
that.
Yeah.
didn't expect to be a bunch of giants immediately.
Yeah, we need to. We can't. Whatever. Okay, well, that was learning experience.
That was the practice attempt.
Yeah. Okay, it's going up the ladder.
Up the ladder, everybody.
It's at the top of the ladder. Climb. Look, they have to come up one at a
God.
time.
Oh no!
Run, Corbin! Oh
It's
no,
over.
it's over.
That's terrible scans.
Fuck it, I'm going for
Giving
him.
up till I'm out of ammo.
I'm reloading.
Oh god, they're behind us too! Oh shit!
Okay, well, now I'm down.
I'm down.
Yeah, one of us goes
over, guys.
down, it's over.
I'm gonna get
I'm
you all
sorry.
up, alright?
Okay, he's got this. Solo it. Solo the group scan.
Get to the scan. A lot are unpinged right now. Huge wave on the right.
Hybrid.
You're
Hybrid.
hybrid. Yeah.
Hybrid.
Get that scan
I'm
done.
down.
Oh,
Oh
fuck.
god, Billy's done.
Okay,
I'm down.
It's over.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, yeah, one guy goes down, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. There's no
Unfortunate.
coverage.
That
Definitely.
hybrid placement. Like,
Okay, we don't got time to
it's-
set up. We fight here.
alright, that's it, that's it. Someone pick up the turbine.
I'm picking it up. Okay, dropping it again.
Yeah.
Reloading.
I'm reloading as well. I'm trying my best not to go down here. Oh, pick up the turbine.
Grabbing it.
Reloading.
I'm down.
I'm trying to keep him staggered. You're down? Okay. I got the turbine.
I'm picking
Not
up.
many left, guys. I'm down.
Nope.
Just kill the enemies. Kill the enemies. Don't work on them. Work up the ladder.
I can't see him. I can't
One
see
guy.
him.
It's
Work
one
up the ladder
guy.
really. Or something.
I'm
Go
going down,
down.
man.
That's it.
Fuck.
It's okay. I go further than last time.
You literally can't see him in the fog. Holy shit.
Yeah, this one's pretty tough. Not many other levels in video games where you have to have a group meeting beforehand. It's a blend of the hardest stealth yet and the hardest combat encounters yet, culminated by a finale that's so legendarily difficult, it skyrockets this mission to the top 5 hardest list. Like seriously, if you cut out the last quarter, this mission is considerably easier than R2-D2. But we'll get to that in time. So, the first room we drop into is a mix of infectious fog and the high ground surrounding it, with sleepers spread pretty evenly throughout it, and a single scout on patrol in either this room or the next. The first security door is unpowered, so we have to locate a cell and the generator. The generators are always in the same spots, but the cells are all over the place. There are no resources in this zone, but all of the lockers usually have repellers, which we can use to enter the fog for now. After clearing out both rooms, we insert the cell and prepare our defenses. The security door is a class 3 alarm, but there's a twist. This one is a surge alarm. It still has scans like a regular alarm, but there are 2 differences that make it substantially harder.
1. This alarm does not spawn waves. Once you pull the lever, enemies simply spawn until the cap is hit, and as soon as one dies, a new one spawns. So they basically never stop their onslaught once they reach you. 2. Every scan is a full group scan, so if one guy goes down, unless you can get him back up, the scan won't complete. Realistically, this means if a guy goes down, the run's pretty much gone. While the alarm says Class 3, I would say it's about as hard as a Class 7 or 8 regular alarm. And this is not the only one we gotta do in this level. The zone after the alarm jumps right back into stealth. It's a single, large room with about 20 sleepers scattered throughout it and 2 scouts. Nothing crazy, but being after that surge alarm, you do not have the supplies to clear this room loud. It's a pretty methodical and slow stealth clear, but after doing it enough times, it flows pretty smoothly. It's the next zone that slows stealth down to an absolute crawl. First up, to enter the next zone forwards, we have to locate another cell, which is going to be in one of the 2 side zones of this room. Using the terminal, we figure out which one. After that, they both basically play out exactly the same. You just need to be sure you're going to the right one. Both start as blood doors, with the twist being that they spawn entirely shadows. It's actually quite a bit easier to clear this way, since one mine kills almost the entire door now, and all you need to handle is the room. This can suck tremendously, however, if that room happens to have a scout on the other side. Like, I swear, these scenarios are only in Rundown 2, but maybe I'm wrong. I guess we'll see. The rest of this zone is the first instance of dormant shadows. Considering that you have never seen them before this point, I could very easily visualize a group thinking that a room is empty and just walking into one. Unless you bring a thermal sight, stealth clearing a room of shadows is painfully slow, and this zone is absolutely huge. To make it worse, we need to gather every bit of supplies along with the cell and a fog turbine, so we are more than likely going to all but 1 or 2 rooms in the zone. I just cannot stress enough how painful this zone is to go through. It's a good 30 minutes of every run, and I've never seen it done flawlessly once. After a bit, regular shadows are no big deal, but shadow giants are extremely hard to kill in stealth due to the fact that they move around way more than a regular giant. Why? I have no idea. Anyways, grabbing the cell, we work our way back to the open room and dive down the ladder to deliver the cell, and lo and behold, there's a Class 4 surge alarm. This one is super RNG dependent. The prior surge alarm only spawned melee sleepers, but this one can spawn hybrids, and it's pretty random how many or when it spawns them. On top of that, these scans are incredibly mixed bags. You can get scans one right next to another, and you can get scans that go across the entire room. All you can really do is try to prepare for the worst, and as soon as the scans wrap, take a defensive position as a team. Moving on to the next zone, it's completely submerged in infectious fog, and once again, it's a single large room. But this one is a series of interconnected tunnels. This room has a sleeping giant or 2, and a dormant hybrid, along with the usual crew and another scout on patrol. Another slow, methodical clear, but this one's not much harder than the last one in my opinion. This room has a cell somewhere, so we go ahead and grab that. Unlike the prior zones though, there are 2 generators. We plug into the north one. If you plugged into the south one first, it makes the entire next section about 1,000,000 times harder. Well, what do I mean? Well, I'll show you. The way to proceed is another Class 4 surge alarm. Every enemy currently can only funnel into this room via the ladder that we took to get down here. So we set up a choke point of all choke points, spraying a ton of seafoam, and placing a shotgun turret to blast every last sleeper that dares to hop down that fucking ladder. If you placed a battery in the south generator first, you're forced to open up another route of entry for the sleepers and completely fuck yourself here. Using our strategy, this is one of the easiest alarms in the game. We rush over at the end and mop up whatever's left.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a lot. I'm gonna Hell Shark because I have to ammo balance.
They should
and I'll
still get
full
frozen
piercing.
and shit.
Yeah, I'll get full piercing on this, so I'm gonna.
It's a fucking slaughter!
Jesus, they're dead. That was worth it, and I balanced so I can take ammo use now.
The next zone gives us a brief breather. It's totally devoid of enemies and has enough supplies to at least partially recover ourselves. In order to move forwards, we have to do a class 4 alarm, but at least it's not another surge. I've actually found this one to be the silent killer. A lot of hybrids spawn in this wave, and we usually end up taking a ton of damage here. Usually around the second or third set of scans when they inevitably go into the foggy parts of the room. I found using some seafoam here to delay the first wave helps quite a bit with mitigating damage, since it allows you to finish scans before meeting the wave and then take up a defensive position. So, with that alarm out of the way, we finally enter the zone with the neonate. It's one room free of enemies and... Wait, what the fuck? It's a baby? We came all the way down here to grab a fucking baby. Well, we're here now, we might as well just take it. The key we need to get to extraction is always in the locker next to the baby case. So, before we enter the final fucked up gauntlet that is extraction, we take the cell in the circle zone and go plug it into the last generator. This unlocks a blood door, leading to an optional zone that we need to hit to resupply. Once again, the blood door spawns only shadows, and opening it turns all the lights off in the level. This actually makes things quite a bit easier. Shadows are way easier to find in dark rooms opposed to light rooms. There's something about how lighting works in this game that makes shadows harder to see when two light sources are on them. Don't believe me? Have you and a friend shine a light on a shadow, and then have just your friend shine a light on one, and see which one you see better. The zone itself is quite large, but we get a terminal right in the first room, so we work out where we're going and where we're not going, and carve through it. This zone spawns regular sleepers too, so some rooms go a lot quicker than others. There's a cell in this zone we have to grab as well, so to make that perfectly clear, we have to take a cell, the turbine, and the baby into the final gauntlet with us. 3 of the 4 people are carrying something for the better half of this. Okay, now for the moment you've all been waiting for. Every level, every painstaking hour of this game before now has been a prelude to this single 20-minute section. The last 2 hours of this video may as well have been a tutorial, because this is the point that shit gets real. The first door we hit on the way out is an error alarm. It spawns 3 sleepers every 30 seconds, and after 4 minutes it adds 1 sleeper onto the spawn stack. There's a limit to this, but you won't ever see it. If you take that long, you're already dead here. This next section must be executed flawlessly, and even then, all but the most experienced players are only going to get through by the skin of their teeth. Very first room, we waste no time. We climb out of the fog and immediately pull the room. Fucking around in the fog is a wipe. Avoid at all cost. The room is huge, so we go down 2 different places and pull. As quickly as we can, we rush to the door to room D and open it to pull the next room. We then sit there until we are sure the error alarm wave has just spawned, and then push as hard as we can to the back of the zone to open up a couple of doors. We're going to need those for later. This push is extremely difficult to do. We usually abandon all but the turbine to free up as many guns as we can and come back for everything later. And even then, this is the point that we wipe the most. After clearing out the enemies, we quickly go back for the cell and the baby, and then enter the final room of the zone. We rush to the door in the back, plugging the cell in along the way. Once we get to the security door, it has a Class 3 surge alarm. Hitting this alarm without a flawless plan is a one-way ticket back to the start of the level. So to start, we leave one guy at the door and then head back to the entrance of the room.
Okay, we're up to 4.
Okay, let's get through.
Okay. Alright, push
Ready?
the doors.
Bring the repeller. Corbin, Corbin, don't hit that fucking
No,
alarm!
no, no, no!
Oh,
Oh my god. Well, now we're
Alright.
fucked.
Alright, well,
Well, that's a wipe.
figure it out.
no, okay.
Okay, I'm not
let's-
giving up, but that's pretty much wipe. I can't
God.
believe you did
Yeah.
this.
My bad.
Okay,
I feel like
we're gonna have to
you
use
footage of
purely
this happening
gunpowder.
before as well.
Yeah. Well, there goes those doors we fucking opened for no reason.
okay. Okay, big scan, good scan. They're in front. Lots behind, They're getting pinged. Oh, I just got shot.
Okay, that's half of
Huge
them.
amount behind
Wait,
us.
one more.
Oh!
It's right here. Just get it. I'm down.
Everybody's dead.
Fucking Christ.
God damn it. I'm so sorry that we were going through there.
I can't fucking believe this.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, so good too.
We fucking had it. God damn it.
So yeah, that guy got cut from the team. The way that you're supposed to do it is to reach the entrance and work in sync as a 4-man team. As soon as the error wave spawns, we rush them down and kill them at fucking Mach speed. Then we shut the doors we opened earlier and seafoam and mine them. When we close the last one, we tell the guy we left behind to hit the alarm. Once the last door is secured, we rush to the first scan and clear it as quickly as possible. Then, we have no choice but to hold out wherever the last scan finishes. The fog is simply too dense to try to fall back quickly, so instead we throw out some repellers quickly to give us better sightlines, and hold out as best as we can right where we fucking stand. If we survive that, we are officially 1/3 of the way through this gauntlet. Entering the next zone, we ditch everything right at the entrance and fucking bum rush into this room. It has always got a scout, and we need to drop it within 30 seconds of entering this zone. Once it's dead, we just group up and go loud. Once everything's clear, we loot this place as fast as we can, getting our final restock for this level. I want to draw attention to me leaving this tool refill behind here. As a seafoam guy, this critical mistake of mine almost costs us the run later. So in order to advance, we need another cell. There was one in the prior zone, but reliably finding that one is a real crapshoot. Luckily for us, it was directly in our path this run, so we insert that one right away, then search the current zone for another cell. While searching this zone, one of us runs up the baby. The door after this also takes a cell, so finding it now makes the last part flow way smoother. If you didn't get lucky, you're going to need to search the final zone for a cell instead. Speaking of, the door to our final zone is a simple security scan, but it opens to an absolutely massive room, with what I'm pretty sure is the spawn cap full of sleepers. There are also spitters, but at this point we are moving faster than infection can kill us. We fucking rush this entire zone as fast as we can to try to preserve the doors in the back. Saving them is the difference between success and failure, so it's better to fail trying to save them than to not save them and then fail. And now, the finale. The last generator is right next to the security door, which of course has one final Class 3 surge alarm. Once again, if you don't go into this with a plan, you're going straight back to the start. This time, one guy waits at the doors. He solos the error wave, then instructs the others to hit the alarm while he closes the door and foams it. Then, he closes the second door while charging foam and pelts it too. As soon as it's frozen, he then runs to the group scan. Then, after that, runs back to the door the sleepers are at and continuously seafoams until he's completely out of ammo or he dies. Unlike every other surge alarm, this one has one group scan followed by 2 sets of 8 small scans. One guy holds the line for as long as he can, while everybody else rushes to get these scans done. As soon as they are, they open the door and make a break for that extraction scan with the baby. The seafoam guy then either dies holding that door or runs out of ammo and races to rejoin the group for one final stand against the endless horde.
Defend.
Okay, I'm running. I'm out of
Door
seafoam.
open.
Okay, we gotta get on here. We
Okay,
need.
they got through. They just got through.
I'm running as fast as I can.
And when you're here, I'm gonna give you ammo.
Okay, you can drop the
Nice
neonate.
slow scan. We're gonna have to fight
You
the
can
whole
drop
wave.
it. You can drop it. Get ready.
Give your turret. No, it doesn't matter.
No, it's up behind the door.
Doesn't matter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Just defend against this shit.
Oh, there's a lot. I'm staggering.
hold
this
out.
Shotgun.
Yeah.
I'm staggering. I'm just staggering them.
I see that.
Oh my god, we did it!
Holy shit, we beat it. Fuck.
Faster than most of our
Oh
other attempts
man,
too.
I was feeling the stress at the end. Thank
Oh,
God.
fuck.
Dude, I am so glad I watched that guy.
Dude, you know how many attempts there was?
I was physically shaking in this moment, riding a euphoria that only comes after 3 weeks of trials and tribulations, learning every single alarm the hard way, learning every room by heart, looking up any little tip to help you get through it, all for this one amazing moment. Is GTFO hard? Hell yeah, it's hard. But there's nothing out there that truly emphasizes cooperation and team challenges like this game does. These first 2 rundowns are but a quarter of what the game has to show, and the show is just getting started.
Oh god. I think this is it, buddies. Wait, that's not a
That
tank.
ain't a tank. That's something
Oh!
different.
In front of what? What is
It's
coming?
coming.
What? What the fuck is that?
Got an idea. One person sacrificed himself instead of mine to kill all of them.
Gee, I wonder who you might be possibly bringing up. I wonder who that one person possibly could be.
Whoops.
What?
You just alerted everything!
Why do they have to be chargers as well?
Fuck, we're almost through it.
I don't have ammo.
Ain't going.
Hack it! Hack it!
He's dead, fuck him.
Oh, I just got shot.
Oh, there is so
They
many.
spawned on us. Where the fuck do we go?
I don't know, we gotta find it. Nicely executed.
Holy shit. Oh, we were fucking bummed.
It actually worked.